Good evening, travelers. Tonight, we step into the strange and uncomfortable world of medieval knighthood, a time when heavily armored nobles swore sacred oaths of honor, loyalty, and courage, before spending most of their lives exhausted, freezing, and covered in mud while trying not to die in extremely confusing battles. So before we wander into tonight's collection of bizarre knightly traditions, dangerous tournaments, endless wars, and deeply questionable medieval logic, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy these calm little journeys through humanity's long history of terrible ideas. Now, settle in, somewhere comfortable. Lower the lights, maybe let the soft sound of rain or a quiet fan fill the room beside you. And together, let us slowly drift back into an age where glory sounded far better in songs than it ever did in real life. You stand inside a crowded castle courtyard just before sunrise. The air smells of wet straw, smoke, horse sweat, and far too many people living together without modern plumbing. Servants rush past carrying buckets, while blacksmiths hammer glowing iron nearby. Somewhere in the distance, a priest is trying to convince frightened young soldiers that dying in battle is actually a noble and wonderful thing. Your chainmail shirt presses heavily against your shoulders like an angry pile of metal cookware. The helmet on your head allows you to see the world through two narrow slits, meaning every staircase has suddenly become a serious danger. Your horse looks nervous. Honestly, so are you. Around the courtyard, colorful banners flap wildly in the cold wind. Lions, crosses, dragons, and complicated family symbols, designed mostly to remind everyone that someone's grandfather once owned a very large piece of land. And despite all the speeches about honor and courage, most knights standing here are currently about far simpler problems. How unbearably hot the armor feels, how badly their feet hurt, and whether the man charging toward them later with a sharpened lance looks particularly enthusiastic today. Because medieval knighthood was never truly the shining fairy tale modern stories like to imagine. It was a world of endless wars, strict codes of behavior, fragile pride, political betrayal, expensive equipment, and tournaments only slightly safer than actual combat. A knight could spend years training for glory only to be defeated by mud, disease, infection, or a horse having a complete emotional breakdown during battle. Most knights began training as children. Young boys from noble families were sent away to live in another lord's castle where they learned discipline, obedience, sword fighting, horse riding, and how to survive on very little sleep while older knights shouted at them constantly. They cleaned armor, carried weapons, served food at feasts, and trained every day until their muscles ached. They dreamed of glory because they had not yet experienced reality, and reality arrived quickly. At dawn, soldiers gather outside the castle gates. Many are peasants who held farming tools only weeks earlier. Now, they grip spears nervously while pretending not to be terrified. In front of them wait the knights, sitting atop massive war horses beneath layers of steel and cloth. From a distance, they appear powerful and heroic. Up close, they mostly look exhausted. Then the war horn sounds. A deep, dreadful noise rolls across the fields. Horses begin moving forward. Armor rattles loudly. The earth trembles beneath pounding hooves, and within moments, everything dissolves into confusion. Dust clouds rise so thick that men can barely see each other. Horses scream in panic. Arrows cut through smoke-filled air. Soldiers fall into mud beneath charging cavalry. Somewhere nearby, someone is praying loudly while someone else is vomiting from fear. And through all this chaos, medieval knights are somehow expected to behave honorably, at least in theory. Knights were taught to defend the weak, remain loyal to God, respect women, protect the innocent, and fight bravely. But reality rarely matched the poems. Many knights burned villages, robbed travelers, fought over land, and solved political disagreements by killing enormous numbers of strangers. Medieval society loved speaking about morality, while behaving in ways that suggested nobody had fully understood the assignment. Yet people admired knights anyway. Poets wrote songs about them. Children dreamed of becoming them. Kings used them as symbols of power and glory. There was simply something unforgettable about armored riders carrying banners across open fields beneath the sound of trumpets and drums. Even if the reality smelled strongly of sweat, blood, wet leather, and poor decisions. Tournaments became one of the most popular forms of entertainment in medieval Europe. Nobles gathered to watch armored knights charge at each other with giant lances, while entire crowds cheered enthusiastically for what was essentially a highly organized series of workplace accidents. Sometimes lances shattered harmlessly, sometimes horses collapsed, sometimes men were carried away with broken bones, or worse. And somehow, despite the danger, everyone returned the following week to do it all again. Because medieval people possessed a truly remarkable confidence in activities that could very obviously kill them. As night falls, the castle slowly quiets. Torches burn along stone walls while weary soldiers sit together, eating hard bread and thin stew. Some clean blood from damaged armor, others stare silently into fires, while musicians play soft songs nearby. An older knight removes his boots with the exhausted expression of a man whose knees have personally declared war against him, because, after battle, the greatest enemy was often not the opposing army. It was infection. A small wound could become fatal within days. Medieval medicine existed in that deeply unfortunate stage where doctors believed removing blood from sick people was somehow helpful. Monks cleaned wounds using wine because nobody understood bacteria yet, although they had noticed alcohol occasionally prevented people from dying quite as quickly. Inside the castle's tiny medical room, a young squire trembles while a monk pours wine into a deep cut across his shoulder. The boy clenches his teeth to avoid screaming. Medieval men were expected to remain dignified, even while someone aggressively cleaned their injuries with alcohol and prayer. Meanwhile, in the Great Hall, nobles continue feasting beneath candlelight. Roasted meat is carved onto wooden plates, while lords discuss politics, taxes, land disputes, and future wars with the calm confidence of men who believe disaster only happens to other people. But everyone secretly understands the truth. Another war is always coming, because medieval Europe rarely stayed peaceful for long. Someone disputed a border. Someone insulted another lord 20 years earlier. Someone refused taxes. Someone claimed God supported their side, specifically. And suddenly, thousands of frightened people were marching toward battle beneath colorful banners. The younger knights spend the evening bragging loudly about their victories and bravery. The older knights speak far less. They know battle is mostly confusion, fear, luck, and survival. They know legends are often built from the graves of exhausted men who never expected songs to be written about them afterward. Outside the castle walls, darkness stretches across forests and empty roads. Medieval people feared the night deeply, and honestly, they had good reasons. Roads were dangerous. Forests swallowed travelers without warning. Wolves, bandits, mercenaries, and desperate hungry people wandered through isolated places where help rarely existed. That is why castles mattered so much. They were not merely homes for nobles. They were shelters against a frightening world. Thick stone walls gave people the comforting illusion that they might survive another winter. Although even castles became nightmares during long sieges. When enemy armies surrounded a fortress, food slowly disappeared. Water became dirty. Disease spread through crowded rooms. Fear grew heavier every day. History books politely call this hardship. The people trapped inside usually called it screaming, starvation, and despair. The fire burns lower now. Most soldiers have fallen asleep against walls or beneath rough blankets. Outside, the moon hangs silently above the towers, while cold wind drifts through narrow stone corridors. Somewhere in the darkness, a tired guard continues, pacing along the wall with a torch in hand. Tomorrow morning, everything will begin again. The blacksmith will return to his hammer. The stable boys will feed nervous horses. Young squires will continue training for glory. And somewhere, another lord will begin planning another war. But slowly over time, the age of knights will begin to fade. Gunpowder changes warfare forever. Cannons destroy castle walls, once thought invincible. Heavy armor becomes useless against bullets. The old world of mounted knights and shining swords slowly disappears into history. Yet the stories survive. Even now, centuries later, people still imagine knights as symbols of courage and honor. History remembers the shining armor and waving banners far more easily than the mud, exhaustion, fear, disease, and suffering. But perhaps that is why these stories still matter. Because beneath the armor, medieval knights were never mythical heroes. They were human beings. Frightened sometimes, brave sometimes. Proud, foolish, loyal, selfish, exhausted, hopeful. Just people trying to survive uncertain times in a difficult world. And perhaps that has never really changed. The castle grows quieter still. The final conversations fade into silence. The horses stop moving. The torches dim slowly against ancient stone walls. Beyond the fortress, forests sleep beneath silver moonlight, while the empty battlefields rest at last. For tonight, there are no wars, no charging cavalry, no screaming horns, only cool night air, fading firelight, and the rare comfort of temporary peace. You close your eyes for a moment. The armor is gone now. The sword no longer hangs at your side. The distant sounds of battle drift away into darkness. And somewhere beyond the horizon, morning waits patiently for another difficult day. But not yet. Tonight, the wall still stands strong. The fires still burn warm. And sleep finally arrives for the weary world of medieval knights. So let the torches fade. Let the castle fall silent. And let history rest for a little while. Good night.